Merlin, network magic. Hey everybody, John Capobianco here. What I thought I would do, the Learn Genie Learn has been very popular. As imagined, it was the #1 demanded video that I reshoot under Merlin. So what I thought I'd do today is I there was a couple of Learn functions that I just had some trouble with, and I believe it turns out it's simply because my pyATS version was behind. So they haven't made the cut yet, but there's two in particular: Learn Platform, which will give me everything about the platform. Now I don't know how well that will work in a virtual cloud environment, given they're not real metal, they're virtual things. But we can try it. But then there's Learn VRF was the other one that hasn't made it in yet, and I'll show you in the repository here in the README. At the bottom of the README, we have all these things that we've learned, and you'll see that Learn VRF and Learn Platform are not in the in either list yet. So I have an NXOS sandbox up and running, and let's just try it at the CLI first. So let me grab the command real quick, and I am sharing my screen. Okay, good. And let me just quickly grab a command, Nexus 9K. I can close the README down, and all I need is this testbed file here. Now I have to put dot in front of it. So let's go ahead and make a directory here called Learn, and go into Learn and do Genie Learn, and let's learn VRF first, and then we'll paste in the testbed file. Now I have to change the path here because I'm in a subfolder. That should work. That should learn VRF and give us two files, the CLI output and the JavaScript object notation output. So it's learning VRF, and that worked. And now if I explore this directory, Learn, there's my file. So what does the console look like? So there's a default VRF and a management VRF. And now if I look at the JavaScript, and I'll quickly rename this JSON, right? I get the default and the management. And I want this file. Well, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. All right, so this is my starting point. So I know that I can learn, and I actually get the route distinguisher and then any IP address family information. And it doesn't look like there's a lot in here on this NXOS, but it's enough that I can add it to the code and to make this video of live development on now that I know Learn VRF works. I'll keep this folder around, but I don't need this output for now in case I decide to try platform. So where do we start? Well, I already have a general functionalities Python file that I already have the learn function written as this nice repeatable object-oriented class with the not the method, the function. Sorry, excuse me, I'm stumbling here. My wife just closed the door behind me. It distracted me for a minute. The functionality here, the function, and we see device.learn, and then the function name, which is what we pass in. So let's go ahead and go to the Nexus 9K Merlin, and here at the top under the Learn info, we're going to add it alphabetically down here. We'll copy VLAN, right, and we're going to say self-learn VRF and change that to learned VRF and change that to VRF. All right, so that's the learn step. Now we have to, again, I'm going to go to the bottom of this file. There's three more functions on save to JSON, save to YAML, and save to the specified file type. So I'm going to find the learn section here, right? Learn VLAN, and it does all these steps. So I'm going to copy this whole thing here, and we'll refactor it for VRFs. Now I do this pretty easily. Now I'm going to change the folder because it's in caps first, Let's change all of these folders first. Are there any other folders? Yes, here. And now I'll go back to the top here and find just VLAN and replace this with VRF, and I will step through it to be careful and to catch every. Now that's capitals. Let me change that to VRF. And while we're on the topic, I need to make the folder in the DevNet sandbox called Learn VRF, and I like to just put a gitignore file inside of these to initialize them. And now I can go back to my find and replace here and replace. Now I'm gonna okay, this blue 2parse VRF is my anchor point into my Jinja2 template. And while we're on the topic of making required files, let's go ahead and make our required learned VRF. And I'm going to copy these 3 VLAN files, and we're going to rename them and repurpose them for the VRFs. So now this is the main Learn VRF Jinja2 template that makes 3 sections. And this is how I usually do this, is get rid of everything here except for my skeleton Jinja2. Because this is, and I changed this, so this is going to be learned VRF. And you'll see what I'm doing here. It seems like I'm getting rid of a lot of code, and I am, because I don't need this code right now. This is relative to VLANs, and I need it to be VRFs, and I need to get rid of this, and this is learn VRF, and we strip out everything to just give it the skeleton. And if. Okay, so now I can save this. So what's going to happen here is the Python code is going to call this template and it's all empty. So I just get empty files for the CSV file, the markdown file, and the HTML file. And as a result, also the Mindmap file, which is fine. I'm not there yet. I will template it, but I want the JavaScript object notation. Now there's 2 other files I need to deal with because I want to make a net JSON graph out of this. So I can't forget these 2 files, and I just scrub them to say learned VRF. Whoops. VRF net JSON graph. And then the other file I have to rename is the actual JSON that the network JSON graph works from. Okay, so this HTML template templates an HTML file that runs the JavaScript, as you can see. JavaScript, and has a certain CSS theme to it. And it calls, right, net JSON graph, this JSON file here. And we'll get into that. Now, for now, I'm just going to completely get rid of all of this because I don't know what this looks like yet. Again, we'll get to the templates in a second. So I built skeletons so that at least my Python can run. Now this 2parse VRF is the anchor into those Jinja2 templates. That's how I get data, the learned VRF, into and out of. Now I don't know the primary key yet. I can assume it's VRFs, but I don't want to make assumptions. So on my first run, I just get rid of that there. And then I have to continue my find replace, for VLAN with VRF. And we go over nice and carefully and make sure that, yep. And the net JSON, again here, I have to get rid of this because I don't know what the parent key is yet. I can assume it's VRFs. We can assume that that's going to be VRFs, but again, I'd rather not trip up on that. So I'll get to that on my second pass. And this is capitals. And then one more. And now we're up to show VLAN. Okay, so that's all the replace we need to do. So now we're ready to run the Python and take a look at the, let me go back to what we just did there because I just copied and pasted and replaced. Should show me right here. Okay, so from that first bit that we added up here, right, self.learn VRF equals, and then that function to go run the Genie Learn VRF. Right? Okay, you follow so far? Now I say, if that's not none, go ahead and set up some templates, those 3 templates that we just copied, the directory and the file names, and then run those functions that I showed you at the bottom of this page to save it to JSON and YAML, and then also one last time to save it through the file loop. Oh, hang on, I'm not using that function. Okay, I see what's happened here. There's a third function that I should just use, the save to specified file type. But for now, let's just run it like this. Now I can see here, I'm just catching on to something here real quick, that I haven't implemented, I have 2 of my functions here, but this has not been functionized yet. These 2 lines of code could be a simple self call like this line. I'm not going to refactor that right now. I'll make a separate branch later to address that. If you look in my iOS XE Merlin command, for example, I've already implemented that where I use the 3 different, but I'll get to that. I just noticed that I haven't refactored this particular file yet to use full functions, but that's fine. So now for each file type and file type loop, which is CSV, MD, HTML, right, call the template and render it accordingly. And that's why in the template I have the skeleton of, where's my Learn VRF here, of if file type loop Jinja, right? I'll show you where I pass that in here. Here, right? If it equals CSV, then this will be the CSV template. Else do the markdown template. Finally, else do the HTML templating, which is how I can handle 3 different file type outputs with one single Jinja 2 template. Now from there, I run the markmap command against the markdown file to generate a mindmap HTML page. And then this last section here, I don't want to say last section, next section does my network JSON and creates my network graph JSON, and then finally the front end presentation HTML page with the JavaScript that renders this JSON into a network graph. Lastly here, I do a table insert and insert the raw learned VRF into the tiny DB, the Grail. So now the Grail will have every learned VRF in it. Now this is so far all I need to do, and what I'm expecting is to get these 2 files, the JSON and the YAML, which then I can develop from. So everything is saved. Let's open up this folder and hopefully we'll see the files appear in here. And let me get the command before I get too far ahead of myself. This command here. I find it easier just to find it and copy it than memorize all that. All right, here we go. And I'm going to clear the screen. And we're going to time it to see how long this takes. Now, I don't want to say all I'm doing. This is Merlin, the main Merlin. Oh, I'm in a folder. Hang on. The main Merlin, which is the learn and transform and parse, and here we go. Now this is the first run with Learn VRF as a part of it, but I'm learning a bunch of features now, including VRFs. Then I'm doing a bunch of parsing against show commands. I'm templating all of this through Jinja, saving all of my output, saving it into the database, and then reporting on the pass-fail status through pyATS. Now this seems like it's taking, it's not, this is already done. This is finished a long time ago. This is for the user's benefit. We can suppress all of these things and easily have this just run in a few seconds. But right now it's storing the data. So far so good. It didn't choke on Learn VRF. And let's see what the output looks like. Okay, everything passed. It took 6 seconds of CPU, not too bad over a poor VPN. There's Camelot. So now, here we go. And there's the JSON. There it is. So now this is what I template from to make my CSV and my Markdown. Now, unfortunately, there is no IP information. So the templates that I make, they'll be complete as far as this sandbox goes. Now I can spin this up against the iOS XE sandbox and try what it has for VRFs. But let's, for the exercise of templating, and let's look at the YAML file. The YAML file is not super great, but at least we have the JSON. So let's go ahead and template it. So we split this into split screen, and we go find that empty Jinja2 template of ours, the VRF one. And first, so I do this vertically, and then I collapse everything to make it look pretty. It also helps me develop that bottom section, the HTML, if I do it vertically. Anyway, you'll see what I mean by vertically. So, right, what do I want for my CSV file? Well, I want the VRF name and the address family, and I guess route distinguisher. That's all that I can template here. So we say VRF, comma, address family, comma, route distinguisher. That's about all we can do because that's all that's in the JSON, right? So now we need what? We need a for loop. And actually, I'm going to make VRFs. I was right about my assumption. Let's go back to the Python. I need the Python for a second to find my anchor point and make my anchor point. I don't want that file open. Over here in the Python, here I want VRFs and I want VRF. So now I take to parse VRF, and that's what I'm going to loop into. Right? So I'm going to say for VRF in that, and that's really, and then I guess for address family would be my follow-up loop for, and let me just, for the sake of everybody at home who might be new to development, I should tab these in for, address family in to parse VRF dot address family. We want to say VRF, comma, address family, comma, and then for the route distinguisher, we're going to say to parse VRF. No, not like that. Like this, to parse VRF dot, and just because it's the last one and I don't want to type all that, we'll copy that. Okay, so that's it. Now I need to close up my for loops. And then I need to handle the markdown type, right? So here, what I can do is take the header row, paste it here, change these to pipes, very easily done. And then I need my delimiters, because it's markdown and I want a tabular view, I need to make delimiters here. All right, and then in the last row, we just take this and put it in between these pipes, right? Replace the commas with pipes. make sure there's a pipe at the end, and make sure that we do our for loops, right? So we need these for loops here at the end of that pipe, and we need to end the for loop before this else statement. Now we're into the header row, and we do the same thing here. We take this, and we do 1, 2, and we do table header, and paste that in. And for every comma, we replace it like that. Now this is small enough that I'm just typing them. Typically I do a lot more find and replacing and let the editor handle all this. But you get the idea. And then for the table row, for the TD, we just, right. Okay, and then I can't forget my for loops after the body, right? So I want to loop for each row, and then I need to end my loop after the row. And now let's clean it up, and by clean it up I mean make it presentable. Remember, this is a Jinja 2 template, so you have to make sure all of your everything is nice and on the same line and nice and collapsed as you can, with no extra dangling spaces or anything like that. I tab it out to help me write the code, and then I collapse it all down like so, comme ça, to make it look pretty. Now we'll come back and do one more pass to do the net JSON graphs, but let's run it one more time and see what the CSV Markdown HTML looks like. Now it's a little disappointing because there's nothing in there. There's no IPs, or I don't know what other keys are under the IP addresses. But again, I might spin up as an iOS XE sandbox with the CSR and see what it has for show VRF. Well, it looks like I have a meeting reminder that just popped up. So we're going to take a look at these files, and then I'll have to take a break, and we'll come back to finishing up this code. Well, let's see, it's almost done here. I'm just checking some things out. And so now we have, if I go to the CSV file, look at, there we go. Right, so the management, the address family, and the route distinguisher. And in the markdown file, right, there we go. And again, sometimes simple examples are the best to get my point across. And now we can actually look at this as an HTML page. All right, pretty neat, pretty cool. So when I come back, we'll finish up the network graphing after my meeting, and we'll go from there. Thanks again for joining me. We'll stick around. Hey everybody, I'm back from my meeting. Everything went really well. Cisco, the Automation Exchange, wanted to talk about some different things and some ideas, and it was a really nice meeting. So let's get back into this. So what do we have so far? I like to say the base documents for the business ready value, right? A CSV file, a markdown file, an HTML file that I've done different things with. So SharePoint document libraries are a great place to store the CSV file. If you look in the main repo, there's a SharePoint plugin. You can easily tap SharePoint into Merlin or Excalibur or Lancelot or any of the different things and push things like your intended config or the CSV output into a document library in SharePoint. But there's a couple of other neat files, different ways to present the data that we're going to explore. Now we already have one of these files, I just haven't shown you it yet. So again, we looked at the CSV, the markdown, and the HTML. Now there's another HTML file here called Mindmap HTML. Now, all of this HTML you see on this screen here, I did not write this. This is generated, and it uses the markdown file, this. Provided this output, if I do a preview and it renders nicely, meaning it's well-formed markdown file, well, you can then run it through a Node.js utility, and I'll show you the Python that does that. And we just call the command line version here, right? If the path exists, learn VRF.md, will then run the CLI markmap command. Don't open the file. Using the markdown file and creating the mindmap HTML file. So let's take a look at this file in the browser. I really like this file format. Now, it does not come without some drawbacks. This is one of the perfect size. Look at, it's just so neat. And it's a really great size data set for a mind map. Now, I've seen something like interfaces with 64 interfaces where you're going to have 64 branches, and then depending on how many leaves per branch, it can become huge, right? So this is nice for nice, small, tight data sets. Right, there's my keys, right? So VRF, address, family, and route distinguisher. So default has IPv400. Really like this file. Now in the spirit of this file, let's go ahead and finish our work today and write the code for the net graph and the net JSON, which as you can see are sort of empty right now because we haven't templated them yet. So what I do, this is my cheat. Again, I like to refactor. I don't like to repeat myself. So I have valid output here. I'm going to take this, my for loops and my end for loops and my table row and table cells, just this. I'm going to take that and I'm going to paste it into the net JSON underneath. So what I have here is the device alias as an ID. And now I need IDs for each of these other fields. All right, now I'll come back and explain this a little better. But so this is a network graph, and I'm showing VRF with this protocol and this version and this metric. And now I have nodes and I have links that I have to configure from the data that we've received from the device. So, and it's the same logical structure, but we have to reformat it into JavaScript object notation. So I just have to do a bit of cleanup here. We don't need any of the HTML tags anymore. So just flush those out. And then, right, for the sake of making it pretty, tuck that for loop in against the ID. And then just copy ID and start replacing it with, right, so we need 3 of them. And we're going to talk about the last one as a little special. And then we have our end for loops. All right, now in the ID, the device alias is pretty clear. But let's actually prepend this with a VRF. And in this case, I can just do this. And then this is going to be address family. Actually, I'm just going to say, yeah, no, address family is fine. And that, and then this one is going to be I'm just going to say RD. And we're going to take this whole thing. Okay, so those are my nodes in the same for loops, 2 for loops. Now, this is a problem if I leave it like this. This dangling comma. So this will only render. It's kind of like how I talked about if you have a valid markdown file, you can make a valid mind map. Well, if I have valid JSON here, it has to be valid, well formed, no errors. It will compile into a network graph. So I have to worry about these dangling commas. And I have to make sure that if it's the last one, that I don't put a comma. So how do we do that? Well, we do it programmatically. And here's how I do it. There may be better ways, but how I've been doing it is to set my loops. So I'm going to say set VRF loop equals loop. And then I'm going to go to the end here, whoops, and do set address loop equals loop. And then here I'm going to say if VRF loop dot last and address loop dot last. So if that's the case, then do not put a comma, right? Just do that. And then we're going to say else, put the comma, and then we have, excuse the dog, got a puppy in the background barking, I'm sorry. We're going to end the if, we're going to close these for loops. And that will take care of the nodes. Now we have to do the same thing for links, and I'm just going to refer to another valid one and get the links. So we need this in links. And I need those for loops and the loops, the set statements as well. I'm going to put that here. And then at the end, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this bit of logic and I'm just going to place it down here because I know I need to come back to that at the end. So then instead of VLAN, right, device alias from what I copied in, I need to change it to VRF. Now this is sort of, for the network graphing, this is how we assemble it. So what's the parent? Think of this as a parent-child relationship. And then the cost of each link. And you'll see how this assembles itself. So the device alias, the root of it, has a VRF connected to it. Right? And now I'm going to do the same thing here. And we're going to do the VRF, move it up. And then we're going to take the address family and link it there. And then we're going to do the same thing with the route distinguisher. And that will get linked to the parent VRF, not to the address family. Now here is my dangling comma. So I want to take all of this and put it here. And I need to get rid of that extra dangling comma there. That should make well-formed JSON. And let's just make it nice and clean here. And we'll do a quick review from the top to bottom. So the device ID 44 set VRF address family route distinguisher if last and last. Do that, else do that. Then do the links. Okay, we're going to save it. Okay, so on that last pass, I noticed I made a mistake here. I shouldn't be doing equals equals. I'm not evaluating that it equals loop, right? That's a mistake. I just made a quick little mistake there. That should just be straight up. I'm setting VRF loop equals loop. So that's a problem. And now I think everything should run. Sorry about that. I just caught that on a review and after a couple of errors. And I don't want you to suffer through my errors. So I just had a quick look at that again. And now let's see what happens with these JSON graphs. Now, how do we view one of these files? And I'll show you. So what I do, this is an example of one, by the way. This picture I'll show you on my GitHub repo is an example of what a version of it looks like. Now, right where we have the router and then all of the routes, and then they all share this next hop. So in my WSL Ubuntu, I run this push D Python 3 HTTP server, and I bind it to my local IP. So that way I can render and browse and see what these look like. So I just need to keep this command handy for when this is done for us to go look at the net.json graph. Now we're not going to look at the graph right away. We're going to look at the output and make sure that the JSON's well formed, and I'll show you what that JSON that we just wrote renders or compiles template Jinja 2 renders out, and then how the HTML calls it. And then I'll spin up the Python server and show you what the network JSON graph looks like. So it's storing the data now. As you can see, this is very easy for me to add commands because I've built up a nice repeatable system where I copy this, I copy that, I make a template, I make another template, I copy some more, right? It's the hard work is behind me for things like learn features. Okay, so it's done because I've done so many of them and I have a nice repeatable system. So let's see. Okay, good. Now, how I like to check, this JSON is not red up here or in here. It's green. You see how the file is green and it's green, and in the sidebar over here there's nothing red. That means it's a well-formed JSON file, which means it should render fine. Let me show you what I'm talking about. What if I got that for loop wrong and left a comma there? Well, look, VS Code. I was talking about VS Code. Right away the file goes red on the left, file goes red at the top. I get a hyphen down here that says it's broken, right? It shows me where that it's broken. This is not good. It tells me that this is not good. Trailing comma, view problem, no quick fixes available. Okay, so use VS Code. And now let's go ahead and run the Python server and see what this net.json graph looks like. So we're in Camelot, we're in Cisco, we're in DevNet, we're in the new Learn VRF, and we need the net graph HTML, and it renders nice. Look at this. Okay, so what does it mean? So if I drag out the router, right, this is the sandbox, it has two VRFs attached to them. It has a management VRF, which we can kind of make the focus, which has a route distinguisher, and look at the route distinguisher is shared between the two VRFs, or they have the same route distinguisher. They also have the same address families, right? Pretty nifty little file. I just think it's the coolest thing, that I'm able to do this in a couple little steps with a little bit of code. Pretty incredible. Now while I'm in here looking around and talking about these, let me find one that I really like. I don't know, let's just check out route. Do I have one? I didn't prepare for this. Let me see. Here, okay, yeah, this is a good one. So here's our router, and we drag it to the side. And look, the first tier are the routes. They tell you. So those are the routes. And then the next tier is the outgoing interface. And then the last tier is the next hop. Everything you'd want to know about the routing table. And now we can also see if there's the next hop or the outgoing here, route 0. This is the default route. So any traffic that does not have a match is going to try to go to 10.10.22.54. And this is real. This is from the real sandbox. Right? If the network is in the 10.10.20.58, like if it's this /32, the management interface, well, its next hop is 58. Our routing table turned into, I'm off track here. This is supposed to be about the learn feature. But I'm done with the learn feature. So how do I do this? How do I wrap up my code as a developer? Well, I'm going to check my Git artifacts, and there's a lot of them because of the file output that I've created. But let's do a quick review and then check this in. You can see I'm in the branch here, Merlin Git, and I'm checked out branch in Learn VRF. So I like to go here to my source control button and look at changes. And here's the main pyMerlin file. So what have I changed? Okay, I've added the Learn VRF function here. And there's the green block on the far right. And I've added the Learn VRF. I've checked all of the output. All of the file pathing is good. It all looks okay to me. Now, what other files have I changed? I'm not too interested in right? These are the ones I'm interested in, that the VRF files all have things in them and that they all look good, because these are my new file output that we've already explored, but it's a good idea to take another look. And then I have my 3 templates. Okay, everything else is just refresh data sets from the other commands. So let's go ahead and check this in. This looks good, right? Tested, live, YouTube, video, Learn VRF, Nexus, 9K. Actually, hang on. I thought of something else. I meant to do this. I'm getting ahead of myself. So now that I know it all works, here's what I'm really going to do. I'm going to take these 3 templates and I'm going to copy them into the iOS XE folder with all of their other learned templates, because I know it's platform agnostic, right? So now back to those changes that I made in the Python file, right? I'm going to make these same changes. So let me grab these lines of code here. I'll do this twice. And I need to add it to, right, the CSR Merlin. I can add Learn VRFs here. And also to my main iOS XE Merlin, I can add it here. Because of the way Cisco has used Genie, it's platform agnostic. iOS, iOS XE, and XOS. Learn, that learn feature is different than parse. Learn is platform agnostic. So I know this will work now, and I can add this functionality to all my other platforms because I've tested it on an XOS. I just need to make sure that I have all of the things. So I have a learned VRF here. I'm going to need to add a learned VRF here with a git ignore. Under iOS XE. And then I need to go get the other block of code here. I'm going to have to change some paths, so I have to be careful. So this is iOS XE Merlin. No, I want the sandbox CSR Merlin, because this will be the same path into the DevNet sandbox folder, right? So I add it under routing. Camelot Cisco DevNet Learned VRF, right? That's right. Camelot Cisco DevNet Learned Routing. Okay, so I don't need to change that one. But this one I have to change. Yeah, this one I'm going to have to change the path slightly. Here we go. Now instead of Camelot Cisco DevNet, this one goes into Camelot Cisco, and then there is no DevNet. It goes into iOS XE. Right, it goes in here. Learn VRF. All right, now I'm ready to commit all this in. Yeah, good, good, good. Okay, so this is Learn VRF Live Dev YouTube. I probably spelled tube wrong there, but that's all right. Okay, so now I should have a pull request back here in GitHub if you've never done any development like this. Back in GitHub, right here, Learn VRF, the working branch I was in, right? Learn VRF, and all that stuff I just pushed. Now let's do a proper review of this compare and pull request, right? YouTube video, can I change that there? Yeah, good. YouTube video recorded of this PR added Learn VRF tested live on Nexus 9K. create pull request. So now here under files changed, right? And I don't really care about most of these files, right? So I'm just going to try to find the ones that we care about. Here, like, so they show you, right? It's too bad that I should have maybe deleted those, but if I look for the, here we go, all green, net new, right? So this is the Learn VRF CSV, right? I want to mark that that was been viewed, VRF HTML, VRF JSON, VRF Mindmap, or Markdown YAML, Mindmap, net graph, net JSON graph. All right. Right, these are my net new files. And then I want to go find my main Python files and my Jinja 2 templates. So I just have to scroll through the rest of these output files, YAML, CSV, HTML, JSON. Right, so here's net new, the sandbox CSR Merlin. I have added the learn function and I added the, right, so that's good. There's the other Python file. That all looks good. And the last Python file, which has the different iOS XE path. Good. And then my templates. We know these work. And now I'm going to go ahead, review changes, right? Looks good. Submit review. And now I'm going to merge, confirm the merge, and delete the branch. Now, back in Merlin, under, right, at various places, if we go to the Camelot, Cisco, DevNet, Learn VRF, there are the files, right? And here's that Markdown file I talked about. See, it renders nice in GitHub. So that's it. I may shoot another one of these. I still have to learn platform, but that's how I do my development cycle for these new features. So there's one more that I can do in the sandbox, learn platform. And then in some of my other environments, there's things like HSRP that I might learn in a real environment to add it to the library. I do have some HSRP environments, things like that. But if you want to jump in and help, it's that easy. It's open source. If you want to start writing Python for networks, just get in touch if you need any help. Clone the repo. It's all there for you. Rewatch the videos. Reach out to me for any help you might need. Thanks so much. Stay safe out there.